Hey guys, this is the video on finally getting that starter out of the van. I just wanted to let you know that I did actually forget to include those Ed Puzzle assessment questions in that last video. They'll be in this one, don't worry about that. But we are going to be pulling that starter today. Weather finally cleared up, turned nice, so now we're going to make some more videos. So what I want to go over first and foremost is the safety factor hasn't changed. Always wear your gloves and your glasses, and then that way you're not getting stuff in your eyes as you're lying on your back trying to work on the starter, and you're keeping your hands clean so you don't have to constantly wash them, and you don't get grit and nasty grease and stuff like that all over the inside of the car. I also want to talk to you guys about the tools we're using. I'm going to try and primarily use hand tools instead of power tools, and then that way we're working with tools that are attainable by most people. So these are the tools we're going to be working with. Primarily we're going to be dealing with 13, 10 millimeter, 5/16. We're going to be dealing with ratchets and sockets. Probably going to be dealing with a 13 millimeter and a 15 millimeter to get this out. I also want to make sure that you understood I do have a ratcheting 10 mil here that's going to make the job a little bit easier, and make sure you got a couple extensions. You can add these together to make sure that you're working outside of the engine compartment, and then that way you're not busting your knuckles on stuff. You know, the whole work smarter not harder thing does apply here. We want to make just wise choices. So these are the tools we're working with. We're working with safety equipment, and let's go take a look at the vehicle now. Here's the van, same one we talked about before. We're going to be pulling the starter on this, and the first step of any real engine repair or even just electrical repair in general should be you disconnecting the battery. I've got a helper today. Here's Zach. He's going to be helping me with getting tools and things like that. But yeah, we're going to start by taking the battery and disconnecting the negative terminal. Now, we want to do the negative terminal. That way, as we're trying to reach in here and loosen up our terminals, we're not grounding out our tool against this chassis and causing sparks or welding my wrench to the body of this car. So typically these stud type battery connections that General Motors uses are 5/16 or an 8 millimeter, whichever happens to fit on there nicely. It's not uncommon though where people just get frustrated and they don't have the tools with them, so they grab a pair of pliers and they round everything over. If that's the case, you can get new terminals. You can get the new bolts that have the small 8 millimeter head or 5/16 head, and you can make things back the way that they're supposed to be. So make sure that the job is done to the best of your ability, and it's better than when you first started working on it, besides having replaced the starter, and just follow through on that part. So it is pretty tight confines in here. I apologize for any wind noise, but as long as those hex edges are still intact on that bolt, you should just have to break it free, and then it's just finger tight from there on out. One of the big reasons we don't want to have any battery connection beside the fact that we have a big battery cable going down to the starter motor is because we don't want the engine to accidentally turn over while we're working in tight spaces. We also don't want the sparks and stuff, as like I said before, because of those big cables. So we're eliminating any possibility of sparks and fire and things like that by disconnecting our battery. So as you can see, disconnected, and we are good to go. All right, so we're underneath the car now. We've just got it driven up on a couple of blocks just to give us another 1.5 inches or so of clearance here. It is completely doable on your back though, as long as you got a nice flat area to work. Right up in here, I don't know if you can see it or not, but here is our starter motor. Let me get my flashlight. Here's our starter motor. It's pretty well caked up with grease and stuff. These old 3.8 liter engines are a little bit dirty, but we've got one bolt here that holds it in. We have our starter solenoid and the connections on the back of it here. We'll have to disconnect 2 wires from that. And then there's another connection for our starter motor. And I believe we're gonna have to work through here to get to it. So it's a little bit of a weird placement, but we'll get it out, and then we'll have take a little bit of finessing, but we got it broken free without damaging anything from the looks of it. It is a little bit rusty, but it is coming off. So it took a little bit of finessing, but I was able to get that bolt free. The cable is definitely loose on it now, and we're just going to kind of walk it off carefully without breaking it. If I do come up against any sort of resistance, I'm going to end up taking it, kind of working it back and forth like that to try and overcome any sort of rust that's in there, knock it out of the way, and go a little bit further. If I come up against resistance again, we'll just keep doing that. So for the meantime, just sit tight while I get this off of here. Alright, so we finally got it to the point where this stud is finger tight. The nut's on it anyway. And you can see I got the nut. Don't lose that. We'll take our lead off, get it out of the way. That'll give us room for the next connection right here, which is our battery cable terminal connection. Alright, so we're going to get in here and we're going to get our connection broken free for our battery terminal. It's a little bit harder than the other one, mostly because the harness on it takes like a 90-degree bend. So it'll take a little bit of finesse. Might have to use the box end. I thought it was going to be faster to use the other end, but we're just going to have to go at it incrementally. There we go. Now it's free. Still not finger loose yet. Alright, after a couple minutes of fighting with that, this bolt is now finger tight, and I can pop that off of there. Again, don't lose these. Put them down here with the rest of my tools. Not on the ground, not in the gravel. That way I know right where they are. So this lets us disconnect one terminal. These are fusible links. So this section here is actually designed that if it overcurrents, it'll burn through the wires inside. The connection point right here is actually kind of like a junction where battery power comes down through this big cable here. Get that off. And it's bolted through to this, and it sends power to other components for the car. Alright, so now try to get these things tucked out of the way or looped out of the way a little bit. And now we have better access to get our starter motor out of here. I do need to get that bolt out there, and then the one through the backside, so that is next. They look to be 15 millimeter, but no guarantee. We're all set and ready to go. Alright, so put our 15 on here. We're going to slip it behind the wiring harness. We're going to get on that mounting bolt. It's pretty tight. And of course, snaps free. Now that we've broken it free, it actually feels like it could just turn out by hand. No power tools necessary. Let me get that out and have a look at one of our special bolts. We can't use normal bolts with starters. They've always got these...
Are you talking to me?
No, I'm talking to the camera, buddy. They got these knurling on the edge here, and this is designed to kind of scratch up the inside of the hole that it goes through on the starter, because this bolt and the other one is the conductor for ground for the starter motor. It uses the body. It's called case grounding. So now I gotta see about getting the other one out. It's up in this region here, and you have this bracket here that's in the way, so I kind of have to use a short socket and then not fully attach our extension. Instead we're going to kind of have it right on the edge, so it gives us a little bit of a wobble.
this extension to go the rest of the way. Oh, you can hear the starter moving, so you know we're getting there. Should just stepped in. This is not working out so well. Well, maybe that's the direction we can go with this. Might have to do this the most difficult way possible. Actually, above the cross member here. Looks like that might work. Just not gonna be able to get it up all the way without disconnecting once or twice. Man, this thing is down here. Man, that is on there. There it is. Holy crap. That was definitely on there. Okay, finally. Alright, don't want to go too far. Still need to get a ratchet out of here. Now, we'll try that method I was trying to remember. Couldn't get on it with a lot of torque, but I can use light torque on it and get it to come out. Now obviously, if this car were on a lift, that would be a lot different, and we'd be able to apply a little bit more leverage without breaking as much of a sweat as I did here trying to line my back. So, in a professional work environment, this would be a different story. It's still going to be a pain in the butt. It's still going to be hard to do, just not quite as hard. And that bolt is almost out. Just going to wiggle the starter around to get the tension off the bolt while I spin it. There's our last bolt. So now the starter can pull out of there's some cables in the way. Can pull out of the bell housing. So I can rotate it and slip it out. So you can see, slip this thing out. We want to be careful we're not damaging any wires, because that'll make things really frustrating on the way back in when you realize you broke a terminal or something like that. So, as Corey always likes to say, proper preparation prevents poor performance. And in our case, that proper preparation means making sure you're not hanging up anything on a wire and breaking. There's this little wire here that is right in the way. I'm just going to see if I can get that disconnected. It looks like it's attached to a knock sensor. That's what was holding us up. This little dinky wire here for a knock sensor. There we go. That'll make it easier. And there we go. There's our starter motor. This thing is a whopper. So we finally got it, and here it is. Big old starter motor. And yeah, she's pretty dirty. I'm glad I'm wearing the gloves, that's for sure. We'll get this thing cleaned up and have a closer look at all the parts and pieces to it. But these are the terminals I was disconnecting. And this stud right here was a little bit loose. Once I broke it free, it's like it was partially installed correctly a long time ago. If I tighten up that little nut that's on here, it seems like it stiffens things up. I think I'm gonna definitely snug that down before we reassemble this thing. So I'll clean it up and then we'll do our next portion of our video with bench testing and identifying parts.